in India with legislation that's coming through regarding philanthropy and giving, because we are going to see an enormous amount of money move towards philanthropy, and you are going to be competing with charities, with hospitals, with NGOs, with universities for a share of an ultra-high net worth individual's wallet. So how big is this community? Well, we believe there are about 200,000 people in this world with a collective net worth of about 28 trillion, that's with a T, 28 trillion US dollars. These people have wealth that is very disproportionate. This is about 13% of the world's wealth, controlled by 200,000 people. We live in Bombay. There are 200,000 people at my bus stop in the morning on Friday morning at 2 a.m. That's how tiny this tribe of 200,000 people are. But they punch well above their weight. 28 trillion is more than the GDP of the US and China combined. So these 200,000 people are extremely influential in the world. Where are they distributed? I don't know if you can see this slide very clearly, but I'll make it available to you. So if you're taking feverish notes, I would suggest paying attention and just getting some of these numbers. So in the US, we believe there are about 70,000 people, again, who fall under the definition of ultra-high net worth, which is $30 million of net assets, with a collective net worth of about 9.6 trillion. Europe has about 58,000 people, with a collective net worth of 7.7 trillion. And Asia, which includes Japan, is about 44,500, with a collective net worth of about 6.6 trillion US dollars. How is this going to play out going forward? If you look at how this is distributed by the number of wealthy, so we have, at the bottom, we have the 200,000, and if you see those people with 30 to $100 million makes up about 70% of this 200,000. And these are the people who are going to be moving up the value chain towards probably around here, which is the 250 to $500 million. Now, there's a fair amount of debate in terms of when does it become economically viable for someone to set up their own family office. Conventional wisdom suggests you need close to $100 million or more to set up a single family office. Multifamily offices would hit at a much, much lower level than that. But at the single family office level, it starts to make sense at the $100 million plus level. New money versus old money. And this is important because 2/3 of these 200,000 people have made the money on their own. So these are the primary decision makers. About 18%, so about 1 in 5 of them have inherited it. And the people who've inherited it tend to be a little older than the self-made ultra-high net worth individuals. And you have about 16% of those who have inherited this wealth and who have actually grown it significantly. So that's the way it's broken up. And this is important in terms of how people who've inherited the money, those who have made the money on their own, and those who have inherited and expanded it, their relationship and their behavior towards money is very different in terms of these groups of people. The 5-year forecast in terms of where this wealth is growing, and again, keep in mind, this is the ultra-high net worth community. So Asia is growing the population. So this 200,000, this 44,500 people in Asia, that number is growing by about 6%. And their wealth is growing at about 8.5%, which is significantly higher than the world's average. So what this suggests is those people in Asia, not only are the numbers increasing, but those who are wealthy are becoming wealthier faster. Japan has a large number of ultra-high net worth individuals. But if we discount things like stock markets and exchange rates, the number of people in Japan is going to shrink very dramatically. So when we look at, I'm going to jump to this slide first. When we look at how this wealth is distributed in Asia, and in Asia, again, you're looking at 44,500 with a collective net worth of 6.6 trillion. You have Japan, which is still number one, with about 14,270 people. You have China with 10,675. And next you have India with 7,850 people who are ultra-high net worth, with a collective net worth of 935 billion. Add to this 5,600 desis outside India. So the generic word is the NRIs. If you add 5,600 to 7,800, you're looking at a universe of Indians in India and outside India of about 13,000 people with about $2 trillion of assets, which is pretty significant. And that right now, as we talk, is larger than China. Let me go back. So how fast is Asia's wealth growing? So we expect Asia's wealth, so the ultra-high net worth wealth, that's the 6.6 trillion, to surpass Europe in 2 years, 2.5, 3 years, by 2017. And at current rates, it'll surpass the United States wealth by 2024. So that's in about 10 years' time. That's going to be during our working life. You're going to see Asia reach number one, both in terms of the ultra-high net worth population, more than Europe and more than the United States. In terms of, sorry, forgive me, that was the ultra-high net worth wealth. In terms of the population, the number of people in Asia, in terms of ultra-high net worth, will overtake Europe by 2021. So that's about 7 years away, and the United States in about 20 years' time. Now, whether you agree or disagree with these numbers, you will have to agree with the trends. So whether it's going to happen in 2032 or 2035 is largely irrelevant as long as you agree with the trends. And the numbers bear out. The trends are moving towards Asia becoming richer, both in numbers and in total wealth. So this is page 1 of the top Asian countries by ultra-high net worth population. And that's page, this is a focus on, on India. So when we look at the 7,850, it is distributed this way. You have 103 billionaires, US dollar billionaires in India, and that number has actually fallen a little bit from the previous period. Some of them have died, in which case their assets may have been distributed to their next of kin, in which case the billion then becomes fragmented. So they will fall out of that category. But if you look at the 30 million to 100 million, that's about 5,800 of the 7,800. And if my arithmetic is right, that's about 80%. So 80% of the people in the ultra-high net worth population, I would say, are not yet in the single family office category as yet, but are moving towards that. And that would be largely your ecosystem of Indians residing in India. Is about 5,800 of them are prime candidates for a meaningful multi-family office relationship, and eventually they will perhaps move into a single family office arrangement as and when they get richer and more sophisticated on a global basis in handling the family wealth. How is this distributed by cities? So if you look at where these ultra-high net worth Indians are in India, and if you look at the top 10 cities, so you have Bombay and Delhi, and if you look at Delhi as NCR, then you have Delhi, Gurgaon, and Noida, and that's almost equivalent to Bombay. So between Bombay and Delhi, you've got more than 50% of the ultra-high net worth population in India concentrated in these two cities. This is important from a strategy point of view, because if you just started your business and you don't have the wherewithal to expand into the 10 or 20 cities, then you concentrate your efforts on Bombay and Delhi, and you will have 50% of the target market in India are in these two cities. And if you look at the top 10 cities, then that's close to 95% of the ultra-high net worth individuals are in the top 10 cities. So keep this in mind. But for those of you who don't want competition, perhaps you want to go outside the 2 major or the 4 major cities, and you will have less of your competitors and industry peers knocking on the same doors as you are. This is a very important phenomenon we are going to see. So this is the first time in the history of the world we are going to see a transfer of wealth that takes place of gargantuan proportions. The baby boomers have started retiring. So the baby boomers were your hippie-type, dope-smoking, fun-loving lot. They are now beginning to retire. And it's for the first time in the last 60 or 70 years that you've had generations grow up without a war on a global scale. And this changes people's behavior towards money very dramatically. If we have to look at our parents' generation, or if I can see some of you in the room, your grandparents' generation, who grew up during the war, their relationship and their behavior towards money is very, very different from the younger generation of today, their behavior towards money. The younger generation today, and I speak specifically for India and China too, they are unafraid to spend. They are unafraid to spend because they have confidence about their economic future. So they are not afraid to take loans. They are not afraid to buy goods on credit, knowing that they will be able to continue their economic future with higher levels of confidence. And this is very important for their relationship towards money. So we are going to see over the next 30 years, 16 trillion US dollars is going to move from one generation to the next. And this is very important, that the generation that is going to inherit this money over the next 30 years, and if you want to see in 10 years, that's 4 trillion, in 20 years, that's 9 trillion, and in 30 years, that's 16 trillion. So the generation that's going to inherit this money, on balance, is fearless. Their view of spending, their view of investments, their view on philanthropy is very, very different from their parents' generation in how the parents tend to behave and their relationship with money, where the savings rate was significantly higher amongst our parents' generations than ours. The other very important point for us in India is the generation that's going to inherit this money is significantly more worldly and global than their parents' generation. You have people who are studying abroad, working abroad. In fact, industrialists and companies over here, their world is their economic area. They are buying companies abroad, and companies abroad are buying into their companies in India. So what we were used to 25 and 30 years ago when barriers for economic activity were very high, is those barriers are coming down, and they're only going to come down further. So you are going to be dealing with a group of people that is going to be extremely wealthy and extremely demanding, because your benchmark is actually going to be global. So if you're not benchmarking and you're not competing from now onwards with your global peers, you will be marginalized. You will get swallowed up, or you will be put out of business. So the stakes going forward are you are going to have to play in a global arena because your clients are global. It's not about the regulations. It's because your clients are going to demand that. Here's one area which is very important for those of you, because for the most part, everything is about investment management and perhaps some element of transferring wealth to the next generation, so succession planning. However, we are going to see philanthropy play a much, much larger role with this new generation that's going to inherit wealth. Let me give you a couple of examples. We are seeing this time and time again, that extremely wealthy people at the older generation, they are looking at the legacy they want to leave behind. Contrary to popular belief, very rich people also die. The only way they are going to be remembered and remain immortal depends largely on the legacy that they leave behind. And you are going to be part of that group of people that will help these people have this legacy, whether it is in the form of charity or philanthropy or building yet another hospital or donating money to a university or supporting a cause that they're passionate about. You're going to be playing a very large role in that, in the area of philanthropy. With the new generation, what we are finding is the newer generation is weaving philanthropy into their regular spending. So you will have people who will be looking at